Photosynthesis is the process in which plants take carbon dioxide and water with sunlight and make it into glucose and oxygen. Photosynthesis converts the energy of the sun to glucose to fuel organisms. The process is broken down into two parts, the photostage and the synthesis stage. The photostage makes ATP, which has chemical energy stored in between the phosphorus, their bonds. It's potential energy. And the synthesis stage creates glucose. Photosynthesis takes place in the plant cell, and specifically the organelle chloroplast. The chloroplast has thylakoids and stroma. The thylakoid is in charge of the photostage, and stroma is in charge of the synthesis stage. The thylakoid is green, and that helps it. Photostage, it makes ATP, and it's a molecule that stores energy, chemical energy, and it's important. The first step in the photostage is to take the sunlight and absorb it and energize the electron. It comes in the form of photons, and the chlorophyll, which is green, absorbs all the light that's not green and expels the color green because it doesn't absorb green, and it uses that energy that it absorbed to charge an electron and supercharge it so we can use it later. And that takes place in photosystem 2. The second step is connected to the first one, and it takes water and breaks it into oxygen and hydrogen ion and an electron. And this comes from a hydrogen atom, which has a proton and an electron, and both of them have a positive and negative charge. But what if you were to take the electron out? Then you would be left with a positive charged hydrogen atom and an electron, and that's where the hydrogen atom and electron come from. And this electron is put into the photosystem to do the first stage. And now the third step is to move hydrogen ions from low concentration to high concentration. As you can see, it needs the help of a protein to do so, and it's moving from low to high. So here we use that supercharged electron we had, and from the previous step, and uses that energy to move the hydrogen from the low concentration to the high concentration. This takes place in the cytochrome complex. The fourth step makes the ATP. So we have all these hydrogen ions that are on the inside of the membrane, but because they're in higher concentration and the outside of the membrane has a lower concentration of hydrogen ions, they want to leave the system. And so they do that through the ATP synthase. And when they move out, they spin this wheel-like proton, and this creates kinetic energy. And this kinetic energy is used to create the ATP. So it takes ATP plus a phosphate, and with that energy it makes ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, means it has 3 phosphates. And ADP is adenosine diphosphate, so it has 2 phosphates. That's why if you add a phosphate, it becomes ATP. The 6th step is very similar to the first step, where it takes sunlight and uses that to energize an electron. So sunlight comes in, and the chlorophyll absorbs the energy, and that energy is transferred to the electron, supercharging it for the next step. This takes place in photosystem 1. The last step creates NADPH by taking the electrons from the previous step, hydrogen ions, and a positively charged NADP, and that creates NADPH, which is a molecule that can transport electrons. And that's the photostage. So overall, the photostage made ATP and NADPH, which are going to be both used in the synthesis stage to make glucose. The synthesis stage is quite simple. It's simply a chemical equation. So you take CO2 plus ATP plus NADPH, and make glucose, which is C6H12O2, and this is not balanced, so. And that's how we make glucose from sunlight. So the overall equation would be 6H2O plus 6CO2 with sunlight makes glucose, C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen. So here's a summary of the photo stage. So sunlight comes in and charges the electron. The electron then charges the cytochrome complex, which moves hydrogen ions from a low concentration to a high concentration, and because they're in a high concentration, the hydrogen atoms want to leave the membrane, and they do so through the ATP synthase, which spins it and creates kinetic energy, which then makes ATP. Photosystem 2 also takes in the energy from the sun and charges the electron, which is later used to make NADPH.